take that call that came in from Daniel in California right off the bat. Hey, Daniel.
Hello. My opinion is about Representative Ilhan Omar. I'm speaking as an American, and she does not represent me as American, nor I don't want her to be in the Foreign Affairs Committee. She is anti-Semitic. She is a Marxist socialist. She is anti-American. Kevin McCarthy needs to get her off every committee that she's in. The last time I checked, the 3 Republicans who are letting Kevin McCarthy kick her off the committees are obviously rhinos, including Colorado Republican Ken Buck.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's very close. And Rick Grinnell, our senior advisor for national security, global affairs, former director of national intelligence, knows all about this. Rick's on with us. And Rick, Daniel brings up an interesting point. We're talking about Ilhan Omar. She has said horribly anti-Semitic things. We had the situation with Swalwell and the Chinese spy in his office. And yet it's going to be very close in the House whether that they can remove. Swalwell's already been handled, but the Omar one is vote is there are 4 Republicans that may go the other way.
Well, I find it really troubling that she would be allowed to be on the House Foreign Relations, International Relations Committee. This is a committee that represents America and talks about our moral standing around the world. And I think that her views are very fringe in America, and she should not be able to somehow represent America to the rest of the world. And let her serve on some other committees. But I don't think that she's fit to be serving on a foreign relations committee. She is someone that is too much of a fringe voice. And Republicans and Democrats should agree on this. I'll just finish with this. I thought it was really interesting to see her with Adam Schiff sitting there at CNN, and she was trying to say that, she didn't know that all these things that she was saying were anti-Semitic tropes. And Adam Schiff just sat there, stiff. He didn't say anything. And I think that his silence in the face of Ilhan Omar's clear anti-Semitism is a growing problem.
Yeah, I mean, she has this oversized influence because of her association with AOC, the squad, basically, and this growing movement within the left. But again, this would be up to Republicans. I think that the Republicans that are doing this are kind of suspect for each of their views. I think that they're doing it for their own politics. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Rick, I mean, they would have the Democrats. No problem if you were a Republican making, and I think they call it what it is racist statements. And even if you just took it, she didn't understand it was racism, well, then you're not educated enough to be on a committee like Foreign Affairs. And like you said, go on some other committees, learn, and come back in a decade. But the truth is, if this was the flip the other way, there would not even be a discussion. The Democrats would just do it. It wouldn't be a media issue. No one would be trying to offer any grace to this other politician or other candidate or member of Congress.
Jordan, let's be honest, it would be celebrated. The other side would say this is a very brave and courageous thing that you're doing by getting rid of this voice. But I think that it's time that we look at the people of the districts for the representatives that are going to somehow vote to allow her to be a voice for America on these committees. I think the people in these districts should rise up. If you're a pro-Israel voice, if you're an evangelical Christian, if you're a Christian, if you are someone who cares about Israel, Jewish Americans, we should all speak up loudly to the representatives who think that they can vote for Ilhan Omar onto the Foreign Relations Committee. I think that she needs to be told that she does not speak for America and that she doesn't deserve a seat on the Foreign Relations Committee. There are plenty of Democrats that can serve honorably on that committee, just not her.
Yep. I mean, I want to go to the next story, Rick, which is that it looks like Israel may have been behind a drone strike on Iran. That's what the U.S. officials reporting. Reuters is reporting that. Doesn't know if it was a successful attack. The Iranians are saying it was not. But again, it kind of ratchets up the tensions and refocuses. There's been so much tension on Ukraine and Russia, but this new focus on Iran, which everyone knows is this continuing growing threat. They've had some relief from the Biden administration. They did get the full nuclear deal back, which was interesting that the Biden Rick, your take on that is that even the Biden administration had to give up trying to get back into that JCPOA.
And they were desperate to make a deal. They didn't want to give it up, but they were faced with the reality of what the Iranian regime is doing. I think it's always important that we separate the Iranian regime from the Iranian people, because the Iranian people are suffering under this regime. And I am somebody who's going to have a very strong voice for Israel and not telling Israel what they can or cannot do to protect themselves, and also to think about their neighborhood. You know, if we were faced with Canada trying to develop a nuclear weapon to take us out, and we're saying things like America must be destroyed and let's get rid of America, and a regime that was literally denying basic human rights to its people, I wouldn't want another country telling us what to do about our security.
Right.
I don't think we should be telling Israel what to do.
You know, it's interesting. U.S. officials are pointing to an Israeli role in this drone strike against Iran. They are also saying on background that the U.S. had no involvement in this whatsoever. That doesn't mean that the U.S. wasn't aware that it was happening, but the U.S. was not involved. But it all points to this very strange policy that the current administration has as it relates to Iran. When you were in office, the position was very clear. Get out of the Iran nuclear deal. It was ridiculous. It put the whole Middle East on edge. And that changed the whole, and that's the reason we ended up with the Abraham Accords, because all of a sudden you had a common enemy for the Gulf states, for Jordan, for Egypt, for Israel, and for the Saudis for that matter. And now you have this, Biden trying to get back into the Iran nuclear deal. Looks like that's not going to happen. But they don't want to say anything, Rick, that would be perceived as being anti the Iranian regime.
Well, look, I think this is the problem of the Biden administration, is that they confuse the Iranian people with the Iranian regime. We did a very good job in the Trump administration of separating the two. We understand that this Iranian radical regime is not representing the people, and that the people are in the streets trying to say, get rid of this regime. For some reason, the Biden administration has an inability to separate the people from the regime, and they somehow think that if you're denying the regime money or honor, that somehow it's reflecting on the people. And I say, just talk to the Iranian people. I hear from them every single day, and they themselves are the ones saying that this regime doesn't represent them. Let's not confuse the people with the regime. The people of Iran deserve to have a better government than what they have. The Biden administration should think about this from a moral perspective and have moral clarity about calling out the regime in Iran and condemning it and not wanting to work with it.
Last thing, Rick, we're going to talk about this in the next segment, and that is your reaction now to the growing classified document issue that's now engulfing the former president, the current president, the former vice president, and now the National Archives has notified all living former presidents and vice presidents.
Well, I think it's really important that we start from the top and say that the President of the United States has declassification authority, and that when the archives comes in and starts talking to presidents and former presidents, that they should recognize that declassification authority. The National Archives doesn't have declassification authority. Right. It is the President of the United States and the Director of National Intelligence. So Joe Biden as a senator, Joe Biden as a vice president did not have declassification authority. He should not have these documents. And if he does, we should look in every possible space that he has to say, why did you take these?
A lot going on there. Rick, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for being with us.